Now, by this point, it's public knowledge, and everybody knows that even Nelson Mandela was spied on after his release from prison. And Ryan Shapiro is doing his PhD at MIT and is basically, he's suing the CIA for information. So we caught up with him. Let's have a look at what he said.
I wanted to know, what role did the CIA have in Mandela's arrest? Why were they involved at all? Why did the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States understand Nelson Mandela to be a security threat to the United States, such that the United States would not only surveil him, but provide information to the apartheid regime? I want to know what the CIA and the American intelligence community's broader role was in surveilling and suppressing the anti-apartheid movement. And I want to understand how the United States came to designate Mandela a terrorist threat and maintain that designation until 2008.
So, obviously, Ryan is an incredibly intelligent man doing his PhD at MIT, but at the end of the day, he's just a citizen like us, and he's a citizen who's saying, you know what, government, I want information. So, you and me sitting here, do we have that same right to go up to our governments and say, we want information on what you've been doing? Mukulani?
Well, most certainly we do. Our Constitution upholds the right of access to information on Section 32, which says that everyone has a right of access to information held by the state. But more importantly, it also says we have a right of access to information held by another person when we need that information to exercise or protect another right, which hasn't been done anywhere else in the world. These rights, they tend to limit themselves to publicly held information, that is to say government information. But we are saying both government and the private sector, because we understand from our history that the private sector is as guilty of these abuses as any state institution. So we've covered both sectors. But also important is that the Constitution then says a law must be passed to give effect to this right. And that's why we have the Promotion of Access to Information Act, which was passed in 2000. The case that you've just shown, where this researcher is suing the CIA, he's suing them on the basis of the American Freedom of Information Act, FOIA. And our PIA is the same as FOIA. So what he is able to do at MIT, anyone can do in South Africa.
Now, Murray, there are implications if government were to turn this on its head and change the law. And we know that government is pushing forward the Secrecy of Information Bill, which actually won't give us the access that we constitutionally have to information now. It will restrict it. So what are the concerns?
So, and Mukulani can come in on this as well. I think that first we should look at the situation we have with the access to information law existing, which will remain in place despite the Secrecy Bill or the Protection of State Information Bill. And there are concerns with the way that access to information is working even without the Secrecy Bill. For instance, ODAC has done research which shows that basically 2 out of 3 times that you actually exercise that right and use that law, you probably won't get a response or will be told no. And so there's a kind of a 33% success rate, which is not good enough to actually to meet kind of the standards that citizens expect. But with the Secrecy Bill, I think there's a real concern that information that is deemed to be related to national security or critical to national security will become secret, and accessing it or sharing it will become a crime, and a pretty serious one. I mean, you're looking at up to 25 years in prison in the worst cases of the bill's offences. And there is legitimate cause for a government to protect its secrets and for there to be a law in place. I think people agree with that. But our concern is that this is a law that goes really far beyond what's necessary and really poses a risk that information that is convenient to be considered national security becomes protected, and people who need to access that information and share it won't be able to do so.
Yeah, if I may, I had a visitor recently from outside the country who said to me, but Mugelani, what is the problem with the Secrecy Bill or the Protection of State Information Bill? Just give it to me in a sentence. Why do you have issues with it? My response was, look at Chelsea Manning and look at Ed Snowden. They both got in trouble for leaking, classified information because they had a duty and an obligation in terms of their employment conditions to protect those secrets. But no one has sued the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Guardian in the UK, which published those stories or published all of those diplomatic cables. What I'm trying to say is the world recognizes that, you know, if you have a responsibility to to protect information, you should do so because it's your employment condition. But once the information is out there, then there isn't a problem, there isn't an issue. What our law, or what the draft law, the Secrecy Bill, is doing is that it wants to criminalize mere possession of classified information, or it wants to criminalize publication of classified information, which is not done anywhere else in the world. And this is the biggest problem that we have, because it's going to create a chilling effect on the exercise of the profession of journalism. You know, if somebody gives me a document, you know, why should I be held responsible for being given access to that document? You know, and that's why we say that the Secrecy Bill has serious constitutionality issues on it, on those bases alone.
Of course, I know that you agree that Chelsea Manning and Edward Snowden should also be protected as whistleblowers.
Of course,
no? Yeah.
of course, yeah, no,
Yeah.
certainly, there needs to be protections insofar as their act is in the public interest. It's internationally recognized that even though you have a responsibility to hold or to keep a secret, but if you feel that there's a strong public interest for this information to be known, laws across the world will protect you. And this is what we're also trying to do with our situation here at home.